Hey everyone, Sif here, and I just finished this lively game. It's a Sami mirror against this player named Warluck on Rhythmical Bustle, and the last turn has certain elements of Sami that I wanted to talk about. So I figured I'd just record this short video and let's just dive right into it. So this is a pretty straightforward map. It's 3 bases, 1 airport, 1 tower. We're both going to go for this chain here and this chain here. Get the income. My opponent's going to move past the city. He's going to go for the towers. And he's going to do the same up here. So we'll see a little bit of a difference in capture phase here, because I'm just going to go for income. And I'm going to open an APC to facilitate that. He's on both the towers. I could have conceivably attacked here, but it's a Sami mirror. He's got the capture bonus. I can't actually interrupt either of those. So I won't. I'll just let him have it. And I'm going to capture my cities. See if I can get a little bit of a early income lead. He's going to build his tank down here on the weak side, but it's opposing my APC because he doesn't want to let me just run rampant with it. Makes sense. Gonna end up with infantry in range of either of these cities here. On this map, I really like to build an artillery on this side and break this pipe seam. He's gonna start attacking me up here. One thing I could have done differently, I could have moved this infantry. Instead of being on the mountain, I could have been on this. Well, let's see here. Where was he? Yeah. I could have been on this road, which is actually a better position because it still covers this from the city, and it allows me to initiate the capture on this city here. I think that's probably better, or would have been better. But this was a live game, so we're going to see some mistakes on both sides, I think. Alright, so he's got both the towers now. He's got a 20% attack bonus. Pretty big. I would say that this tower generally belongs to me on this side, whereas this tower belongs to him. Pretty tough to contest that coming from this side. So we're going to see how long he can retain this. I'm going to initiate my capture. I've got an infantry and an artillery backing it up. My artillery is in a really nice little spot here. I've got it covering my capture on the comm tower, and then also it is in position to take shots at the pipe seam when it's not firing at his units. So he's going to go in, kill my infantry, wound this infantry down to 2. And he's going to take an artillery hit. But I have no towers, So this is gonna do 3,500 to him, plus 300 from this, and I'm losing 1,800. So basically he's losing twice as much army value from this trade, but he's eliminating a unit. And is it worth losing a unit compared with 2,000 gold? Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's not necessarily a mistake, but I would say that because he ran forward here to capture this comm tower, he's sort of committed himself to this pretty aggressive line, for better or worse. We're continuing to trade infantry back and forth up here. This is a good place for him to fight. This is my weak side. This is his strong side. But I'm going to try and constrain what's going on up here so it doesn't get too out of control. He's got an artillery down here. I'm gonna, like I said before, I'm gonna try and break through this pipe seam. Looks like he's gonna try and break through this pipe seam. So the advantage here for him is that he's going to accelerate his reinforcement rate from the airport with battlecopters. Oops. And that is going to allow him to, that actually puts his battlecopters 2 turns from the comm tower. So it looks like his plan is to keep this, try and retain this long term and then reinforce it by reinforcing it with battlecopters. It's pretty aggressive, but one thing his strategy has going for it is when you have 2 towers to your opponent's 0 towers, you want to be brawling because you're accruing an advantage every time units fight each other. And this aggressive line essentially forces a brawl. So there's definitely some coherence to his plan here. The disadvantage that he's going to find himself in is because he committed the tank down here to this trade the previous turn, in order to interrupt me more efficiently by clearing out one of my units instead of just losing one of his to delay the tower. Sorry, he probably would lose 1 infantry and then have another infantry wounded. So that would just be a straight up losing trade. Whereas this way he's trading off an infantry and then wounding mine. But the disadvantage here is that he is going to have less HP on his tank for subsequent trades. However, because he has both towers, let's look at this trade here. He's got 7 HP, I'm full HP, but he's got plus 20 attack and he's got the city to attack from, which means that even though he's got a wounded tank, he's going to take 4 HP off of my tank and only lose 3 HP off of his tank. So that's actually a positive trade. Interesting. And he's going to continue, he's going to strike all my infantry here. Wound them all. Sami mirrors really boils down to the infantry, because you want to, because Sami's powers revolve around her foot soldiers, wounding and eliminating infantry is going to reduce her effectiveness over time. So basically the way you lose as Sami is you just run out of foot soldiers. Um, and then we're both just building a bunch of tanks. And I considered moving this APC onto the forest in order to, or I guess I could move it onto this road to pick up a mech at one point. But another element of Sami Mirror, because it's so focused on the infantry, I think mechs lose a little bit of their value. Certain maps, they're better. This map is relatively open. Um, and so you're really just going to be throwing a lot of infantry at each other. And in that sort of a scenario, mechs they're 3 times as expensive, and they're quite a bit slower moving. So they do have nice firepower advantage, and that allows them to one-shot opposing infantry on light terrain when you use your powers. But overall, their effectiveness is not as great as if you were playing a different matchup and your opponent's vehicles carried more weight. So we're just going to be building a lot of infantry. We've got this brawl going on down here. He's streaming his tanks down from this base, but he's in a bit of a tricky position here. Since this is his weak side, my tanks are coming in, and they are 2 turns away from the fight, whereas he is streaming tanks from this base, and they are 4 turns away from the fight. So over time, I'm going to have twice as many tanks from this base. He's got this base too, but he used one of his builds to set up this artillery break on the pipe seam, which means he's going to have less to fight here. I'm going into this attack here because this is actually not covered. He can trap me somewhat by moving this here and this here and this here, but I decided that I have enough stuff that I could break out of that and then create a bit of a dilemma for him. If he wants to continue fighting down here, then he can't really divert units up here to fight, and vice versa. He kind of has to choose. And I've got a bit of a lead too from these tank trades and the artillery shot that I took on his tank. So in terms of his army value, it's not looking super great already. He's evening things out a little bit here. I thought that he might be considering using his power here because it just got charged. He's only got 2 infantry attacks with it, and my infantry are in pretty good terrain. They're pretty safe here. And I think that maybe if this infantry were 1 square up, then that might have been worthwhile for him to consider using his power here, considering that he's got good odds to knock me down to 3, which would prevent me from finishing this capture on the following turn. And in a situation like that, it's probably worth losing your infantry because we're potentially brawling on both sides of the map, almost certainly if he uses his power. And you're probably getting more than an infantry's worth of value out of an extra turn with the comm tower, especially if it's not the choice between having a comm tower and a neutral comm tower. It's having a comm tower flipped, which is -10 attack and +10 attack for your opponent. So a 20 firepower swing. But the infantry was not one tile up. It was out of range. Using his power just doesn't make sense for him here. But he's going to push up his units and I guess set up for the following turn. He's got quite a few infantry here in the center. He's got tanks backing them up. I've also got infantry, and I also have tanks. So he had 2 infantry attacks with his power. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one will be in range with the power, so that's 5. And then I also have multiple tanks. So I'm going to flip this tower, and we're going to see that a lot of different elements are going to line up on this turn. So first, the tower flip, like I said before, that's a 20 firepower swing. Minus 10 for him, plus 10 for me. Suddenly, fighting makes a lot more sense. I'm going to break my pipe seam, which allows me to stream reinforcements more efficiently to this area, both with the tank and the APC. And so I'm also going to use my power. Since it just got charged on the last turn, everything seems to be lining up pretty well. The extra movement range is going to let me get this extra attack here. I'm going to move in with my tanks too. I'm just going to commit everything, because when you decide to go in most cases you want to just commit everything. He has quite a few units here, so if I'm going to win the fight, I have to do as much damage as I can here. See the effectiveness of the firepower from double time here, knocking him down to 1. I've got +1 movement on my infantry, which lets me initiate this capture, which he can no longer interrupt because he's blocked off. His tanks on the previous turn were quite a bit better than my tanks, but now I have my power, and he lost a tower and I gained a tower. So his most likely outcome here is that he knocks me down to 6 and then I knock him down to 7, which is not very good for him. That's not a very good trade, considering how much damage I did on my first strikes here. Because my power adds +10 attack and +10 defense for all my units. It's also going to take a quick look at this. Going to guarantee the kill on the 5 HP tank on the city. Let me make this attack with my 5 HP infantry to clear this from the more favorable terrain. And it lets me get a nice hit in here from less favorable terrain, just because of the huge firepower increase you get from double time. And then it's going to let me boost the extra movement is going to let me boost this infantry onto the mountain. Since I broke the pipe seam, now this tank can reinforce everything. And my opponent's going to resign. So this was a pretty short one. I felt like this was a useful illustration of when you might want to consider using double time, when you might want to choose it over Victory March, Something to consider is if you can't inflict enough damage with your double time, then in the mirror, then your opponent is, they're going to get their victory march in the coming turns. So they're going to have their victory march before yours guaranteed, obviously. So if you don't do enough damage, they have a bunch of wounded infantry. You could be in trouble because those wounded infantry can get the instant captures on your property, and you may not be in a position to capture them back right away. But this is an interesting quick game that I just played, and I wanted to record while it was still fresh. So I hope that you found this helpful. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.